Hey everybody, it's Tony Sweet and Captain Ron. We are here because we have another great guest for you guys. We have Caroline Cory, and she is a futurist, filmmaker, international speaker, and visionary, author of best-selling books on consciousness and quantum healing. She has appeared on Ancient Aliens numerous times and has written and directed documentaries on the subjects including E.T. Contact, They Are Here, and last year's Superman, the invisible
Superhuman.
Superhuman. What did I say? Superman.
Yeah.
Superhuman. Well, she's
She
a
also
super.
wrote- she
She's
also
a
wrote-
superwoman. Yes. But we want to welcome her to the show. We are so excited to have her here. We have Caroline Cory. Hi, Caroline.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Oh,
That was superhuman.
Yeah.
Superhuman. Human. That's it. Remember
Well,
how?
some of them might be men, so
yeah,
they
it
could
be men. Yeah, maybe. I hope I'm not a male chauvinist, but here we go.
It's great to have you on here, Caroline. We, like I said, we saw you at Alien Con last year, and to be honest, and we also saw your film E.T. Contact. A lot of the stuff you talk about, I'll be frank, is a bit out there, and it's a bit of a stretch for people to accept because it's very high concept, and it's very you gotta It's a long way to go on some of these things. Yet in your film, it actually looked like you're trying to look at this in a scientific way to quantify and prove the existence of ETs interacting with humans.
Yes, absolutely. Because for me, I had direct experiences with not just extraterrestrial, all kinds of non-human energies and entities and beings at a very young age. And that kind of stayed with me my whole life. So I know this is real. And then working with hundreds of people my whole life, this is such a real phenomenon that I just kind of wanted to bring it to the next level. And if possible, bring any sort of scientific evidence of that contact. So that's the reason why I approached it from that perspective. At least when people come in contact with a non-visible, non-human entity, something has changed within them. And I think I was able to demonstrate that in the film when we did that DNA experiment.
Correct. There's no doubt. And those people clearly believe it, as do you. But for the rest of the world, it's harder for us to grasp that and accept it because it hasn't happened to us. So it's nice to see these guys at Harvard and Stanford actually studying the phenomenon.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was really so happy when the folks from, like you said, Dr. Shield, for example, from Harvard, Smithsonian. I mean, it doesn't get more credible than that.
No doubt about it.
No.
So tell us about this DNA experiments. Like when you I don't know, what'd you do? Beam your energy into that DNA? Tell our audience what you did that altered DNA without touching it.
Yeah, so what happens, and I'm sure a lot of energy healers, you've heard of hands-on healing and Reiki and things like that. They can relate to that. And so it's really your intent that directs your energy to a specific substance. It could be anything. In fact, in this last film I did, we did an experiment on water, and we were able to change the pH in water just by telling it. I mean, this is done again in a laboratory, scientifically. So it was the same thing with the DNA. I literally said, show me any sort of strong effect, and that's all. And that's what happened.
And so that when they restudied it, there was this new frequency, 94th frequency, that showed up that wasn't in the DNA previous to that.
Yeah, so there are two things happened. The first thing was the electrical conductivity in the DNA shot up 400%. Exactly at the time that I interfered with it. I mean, that's what we call it, interfering. But actually, so just for the folks who are listening, before we start an experiment, we create a baseline, meaning if we're studying, for example, the electrical conductivity, we measure the electrical conductivity for several hours, sometimes days, so that the moment that I sit down and try to do something with the DNA, we know that it happened exactly at that time because of the intent. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you can say, well, how do we know? It just didn't happen because somebody did something else at that time. And once I stopped the experiment, it goes back to the baseline. That's how we know that this effect is real. So that's the first thing that happened, the electrical conductivity. And then what happened, actually, this was unexpected, which was huge. Dr. Ryan, Glenn Ryan, the doctor who was running the experiment, called me like a week later, and he said, Caroline, you're not going to believe this. Something happened. I said, what? He said, I started measuring the frequencies, not just the electrical conductivity. And I found that a frequency that wasn't there. We measured it over and over and over during the baseline, but that specific frequency showed up only when you did the experiment. So that was insane. Can you imagine?
It's fascinating to think that you can. He's basically proving or demonstrating that you can, in fact, affect DNA through pure just intention.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That was the point. And so in the context of the film, it was because people feel something in their body. They feel transformed. They feel different after a download or, coming in contact with, some entity or something. And so I wanted to kind of show how we could measure that. Is it possible that somebody else's intent or energy is actually changing our physiology? That was the point of the experiment.
I like it. Because I always want to find out a way to prove to the rest of the world that ET contact is actually occurring. And I have nothing to point to other than testimonial. And obviously that's something, but it's not enough for most people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just one aspect of it. As you know, Ron, it's, you have the UFO sightings, it's not necessarily a proof that there's a UFO that's flying above us. No, this only proves, and it's very specific in the film, I'm only demonstrating how it is possible to be affected on a physiological level by an entity that's not there. That's what people are claiming, and that's what I was able to demonstrate.
Well, we also let's talk about some of the other experiments you did with people there. Well, I don't think you were involved in this one, but you guys touched on it. That Edgar Mitchell experience when he was on the moon, and he transferred the information to Earth in half the time because thought travels instantaneously as opposed to the way the sound does.
Right. And this is a story that Edgar Mitchell told Dr. Shield because they worked very closely together. They started this organization together. So he shared that experiment that he did with him, which was actually different than some of the experiments he shared more publicly. Like I'm not sure if it's in his book, but at least in his talks. And so that was amazing that he actually just did it with some friends. I mean, with a guy in Houston, knowingly, but also with other individuals. And he said, what if we did it this way? Can we, what would happen? And it did work. I mean, it did, it worked. And so that also demonstrates that, of course, there's no time space. Thought is instantaneous. Quantum entanglement. I mean, it's huge, especially coming from somebody like Edgar Mitchell and Dr. Shield.
No doubt. We just had Michael Dennon in here. We were talking about black holes. And I brought up to him how you in your film talked about black holes, possibly their magnetic field can be used to transfer knowledge across the universe. You want to talk about that for a second?
What did he say? Oh, I thought you were going to.
Well, he thought it was nonsense, but he said it is theoretically possible. He's a real world scientist, and he's very good at saying that, well, this is possible, but not probable or whatever. And I talked to him about it. Remember, what did he say, Tony? He was like, well, I don't think it's happening, but in theory,
it's possible.
There's the power is there.
And that's what we said. We said there's no way of measuring. We can't go to a black hole.
Right.
Right.
But what we're doing is just like actually what science does. It's assumption. It's all based on assumption. If this thing acts this way and that other particle behaves that way, then perhaps this could mean this. I mean, so that's what we were saying. We were saying, that there are waves, and there are quantum waves that again seem to, because of quantum entanglement, transcend time and space. And because Dr. Shield, his specialty is the study of black holes. So he studies the surface of black holes and how the magnetic energy is extremely concentrated in certain parts, and how it gets stronger and stronger the closer we get to the center of the black hole. And time slows down gradually. So that's why just we kind of put all the elements together to come to that conclusion. So does that make sense? So, I mean, there's no way to prove any of this. Not quite yet, but.
It does. I mean, obviously we're just talking, theoretically here, but if Dr. Shield thinks it, I mean, he's the real deal too. That guy's the Harvard professor with Smithsonian and everything. I mean.
And his specialty is black holes.
Wow.
So all he's doing is look at black holes all day long. So again, we never said like this was proven or anything. We're just saying that it is possible that that's how our consciousness being coherent, having a spiraling effect, could become coherent with other spiraling mechanism in the universe, other spiraling waves in the universe, and they would kind of use or utilize the concentrated magnetic field at the black holes to travel from point A to point B, because time slows down the closer you get to the center of the black hole. It's almost like you go more and more and more as you get closer to the center, you start to go outside time and space. So if you're outside time and space, it means you can be everywhere and anywhere at once. That's what it means to be outside time and space.
That's just so beyond comprehension, though. I mean, it's not like, that's a big thing to say. And there are people that say that it's possible that those are wormholes as well to travel to other parts of the universe.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a bit of confusion with that. In fact, we were just talking about this with Dr. Shield, because we're still running experiments. I mean, beyond the film, we're still working together on other things. And he actually doesn't believe wormholes exist or work in the way that people think. So, it's one of those things. I think it's still, science is not clear on any of this, So,
no doubt. I know I'm not. I mean, that's what we're doing here, right, Tony? Trying to figure out what the hell this is all about. But you say that you've personally been visited by these light beings, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It seems like it's not like this happened to you when you were 5. Like, you see them now. I saw you giving a lecture once, and you saw them in the back of the room.
Oh, yeah. I see them now. I can see them through the Skype or whatever we're doing, Zoom.
Is that, you do? You see them sitting here in this room?
Of course.
Now I'm nervous, man, because we've had psychics on that see ghosts or spirit beings next to us, and then they'll communicate with them and sort of do a psychic reading or whatever. Is it similar to that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like what I perceive subtle energy. Subtle energy is any energy beyond the human spectrum, visual spectrum. So if you can only see within a certain spectrum, I can kind of see beyond that. Like I can see the X-ray without the machine, let's say. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so because of that, there are beings that are existing in that spectrum. And so, then like, it's as if I increased my visual range, and so I can just, when I focus on it, I can see that other part. And, I realized I could do that when I was 5 years old. Of course, at the time, it was like, okay, whatever. Like I thought everybody did that because when you're 5, you don't know better, and you don't.
You think this is normal, and everybody sees these beings.
Yeah.
When you're 5,
so
yeah.
I didn't think anything, and I didn't think it was anything special. I didn't think I was special. I mean, I still don't, honestly, but I'm just saying, it's just, I thought, oh, okay. Well, that's just how it is. And sometimes you can communicate with beings, and that's how it works. And so because of that, I feel like it just stayed with me in working on consciousness and researching and spending my whole life working with different people. I kind of, I mean, I can use the term, I think, mastered that ability to see. So, but many people can do that.
But you act like it's a normal thing, because to you it is. But for Tony and I, we're sitting here. I can't even imagine seeing somebody else in here, and you're seeing it through the camera.
And is it the same? Is it the same beings since you were 5, or have they changed?
Yeah. So when I was 5, the beings that I connected with are more kind of like a light being. They didn't take on like a humanoid form.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like a light sphere of light sort of thing. But when we communicated, I could tell that they were beings. It wasn't just a sphere of light. They were actually an intelligent consciousness, an intelligent being. Um, so I also understood that that was kind of like a lineage that I'm connected with. And so it was very familiar, very comfortable, not scary at all. And so that is this is the lineage and the beings that I'm always connected with. However, as I continue to, research and work in this field, I started meeting and communicating with other beings who are not of my lineage. So, for example, you know, aren't you sometimes wondering why some people talk about grays or talk about reptilians, or some people talk about Pleiadians, other talks about Arcturians? I mean, why aren't we all talking to the same people? And so I realized that of course, like I said, since I was very young, that we all have different lineages and we stay connected.
Yeah, but you're talking about a totally different experience. Every abduction experience we've talked about on this show, the person's like, whenever they have this experience in bed, in their car or whatever, they get taken up or whatever, they have a visitation, they see the being for that 15 minutes or whatever, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
But you're acting like this is a part of your life, like when you walk around, like right now today, you're just sitting and you see him now.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing than the normal abduction experience we talked about.
I mean, it sounds like because
it has nothing to do with an abduction experience. I was never abducted.
No, I understand that. That's what I'm saying. You're talking about something different than abduction. That's what I'm saying.
It's just an ability that everyone has. Everyone can do this and does this. You just don't know how. And I think in fact, I teach people. I mean, I teach classes on just being able to perceive the subtle energy. But I think what helped me was because people ask me, well, wait, when you were 5, so did you tell your parents? Did you tell other people? And I didn't tell anybody, like I said, because I thought it was normal. And so it was much later, like when I was a teenager, I was like, wait a minute, other people don't talk like that, or they don't see like that. I started to realize it was a little bit different. But what I want to say is that because I didn't make it a big deal, I didn't talk about it, and the adults around me didn't say, hey, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't say that, you're crazy, there's nobody there, or I was able to think of it as a very natural thing and understand it, research it, go deeper into it, help other people with it, teach it to others. This is just an ability that everyone has.
Well, it sounds like we've talked about this before, about being intuitive, psychic, medium, whatever you want to call it, because it sounds very similar to people having ghost experiences.
Sounds just like the psychics that come in and say, I see your father next to you.
They visit me all the time. It's the same being. It's the same spirit. Do you feel that could also be a mixture of spirit, from ghost to a difference between alien beings, or are they the same, one and the same?
It's one and the same. So that's what I meant. You see a spectrum. It's like it's like a spectrum. So anybody who's there, you see. If it's sometimes it's a deceased relative, or sometimes it's an energy form. It's not really a being. It's just kind of a thought form. Sometimes you see an alien. So it depends on, like who's there or what you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think. The concept of time space is very confusing. We don't really understand that it's all entangled together, and it's not like, you have to go somewhere to connect with that additional spectrum. It's just wearing an additional pair of glasses, let's say, just like you put it on no matter where you are, and then you can see what's there. It's kind of like that. There is no time space. And so sometimes I don't see any beings because there's no beings there. Sometimes it's just an energy. Sometimes so it depends who's there and what you're asking about as well.
Do you
Sometimes,
do
yeah,
you,
go ahead.
do you think because just like spirits, some come to give you messages, some that just come to visit because they feel like they haven't really left this plane. Do you feel some of the beings or alien beings that come to you are bringing you your messages to give to the world, or to maybe keep you on track? What do you feel that they're here for? Why do you think they chose to be revealed to you consistently?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was very, very lucky to have had those experiences early on, and also to try to understand, like, when I realized it wasn't necessarily common, then I would ask questions specifically like that. Why am I seeing this energy and nobody else is, or they're seeing something else? What is the difference? Are they all telling us the same thing? Why
Mm-hmm.
are they talking to me exactly at that time?
Right.
Is everybody getting the same message as I'm getting? So by asking these questions and working with so many people, um, I first of all, the first big lesson is to put my foot down and say, okay, guys, I am only interested after a while, after meeting a bunch of different entities and energies, with me directly or through other people. After a while, I said, I'm only interested in remaining in contact with my own lineage. And like I said earlier, that energy that I know is coming from very, very pure intent, from, I feel only absolute unconditional love and no threat or anything weird or anything like that. So that is the only energy that I choose to stay connected to.
Mm-hmm.
And when other entities show up for me, or as I'm working with other people, I'm very, very clear to just try to see, why are you here? What is it that you want? And thanks, but no thanks if it has negative intent. Or, okay, got it, moving on. Because we don't realize, and that's what I noticed working, like I said, with many people. These beings are latching on to interfere. To some beings are just wanting to distract you from what you're here to do. Others want to help you. They want to help you heal something or reveal something to humanity. So the agenda is very wide. It's very different for different people and different entities and different species.
Oh, that's interesting, because I was just going to ask you, if you've talked to many other people that have had similar experiences as you have had. Do you see a consistent message coming through? Is there anything that's sort of the same?
Yeah, when it's a positive entity and a positive experience, usually it's always there's always some sort of healing experience that comes with it. A huge feeling of download, like major aha moment, like, oh my God, I've been struggling with this thing, and now I know why. And usually the message is about humanity, that it is going in the right direction. We don't see it quite yet, that's for sure. It really looks like a mess right now. But I feel the common denominator when it is a positive message, it's that it's going to be fine. We just have to kind of hang on, keep the vibration high, and just go through some upheaval until we get there. while at the same time, other entities who really have negative intent, usually they mess up with your body, they mess up with your mind. I see a lot of, I can tell you 100%, every teenager, especially, or depression, suicidal thoughts, all of these have to do with entities. Every single time I see an entity there that is messing with that person's energy.
Wow.
Yes.
That
And
is a bold statement right there. That is fascinating.
I'm telling you,
Do
I've
you
worked.
see it when you see the school shootings on TV? Do you see something?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always
Wow.
because you see, we think some people have the philosophy that, we're here to learn like from good and evil, like we're supposed to have evil to learn about the good, or we're supposed to have the dark to learn about the light. I don't agree with that. I feel that humans have the inherent, like within the DNA itself, um, there is no genome that says that is self-destructive. There is the human DNA originally does not self-destruct because the intelligence of the universe is to thrive. It keeps adding information, it keeps expanding information. So intelligent life is based on the same principle, that it is here to thrive, not to self-destruct. And so even though there are certain cycles, natural cycles, this does not mean that you are self-destructing. For example, the cells that die in your body are making room for new cells. You're continuously recreating, you are transmuting what is, the energy that's there, with more and better. And so if that is the principle of, the creative principle, uh, then humans don't should not have the ability to self-destruct, should not have that desire. And every single time, I'm telling you, there's this entity standing right there. Folks who have alcoholism, addiction, drug addictions, there's always an entity there. Always.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Well, if you think about a lot of, and I know, these psychedelic drugs and alcoholism and, not really cocaine, but mostly like crystal meth. A lot of people do hallucinate and see things. A lot of people do, and even people with mental illness, chemical imbalance. They start seeing entities and spirits that are not so positive.
Another bold statement, if you want one, is mental illness. Since you touched on that, schizophrenics,
Mm-hmm.
they're not imagining things; they're talking to people. They're hearing the voices of actual beings because I can see them. And so what happens is usually schizophrenics are very, very sensitive individuals. So usually it starts at a young age and they're very sensitive to these energies. So these energies are like hanging around them and they're kind of exchanging information. But then through stress and, life, the way it happens, they can't deal with that sensitivity and sensing these other beings. They don't know what they're sensing. They're just sensing stuff. They're sensing emotions. They're sensing things. And so most of the time they will start drinking or doing drugs. Most schizophrenics are also alcoholics. And so you drink and then you lose control of your ability to function. Then that adds to like opens up all, your energy field. And these beings see that as an opportunity and boom, they get in and they talk to you. The voices get louder, the visions get stronger, and then the person cannot understand what's happening with them, especially they go to a doctor and the doctor gives them a pill just to, it tells them you're crazy, this is called schizophrenia. And so they don't know how to deal with it, so they drink even more. And you see it becomes a vicious cycle, and all along it is because there were entities talking to them, and that they could hear and see.
You know, it's actually quite fascinating. I've never heard that before, that schizophrenics are actually really talking to us. I mean, maybe it's possible.
I mean,
who knows?
Because if you really listen to people, like even like some of the homeless people, which I'm sure are schizophrenic, they sound like it's a conversation. It's not just mumbles. It's like a full conversation.
Meanwhile, we got to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from Contact in the Desert. We'll be right back.
Join me, George Norrie, in Indian Wells, California, for the 7th Annual Contact in the Desert UFO Conference, May 31st to June 3rd. Contact in the Desert is an epic weekend of adventure filled with exciting explorations into ancient aliens, human origins, crop circles, UFO sightings, disclosure, and the newest evidence of ongoing contact. This amazing weekend offers over 50 lectures, 40 workshops, 8 exciting panels, special events, and a luncheon that I'm hosting. Contact in the Desert also features leading experts including Giorgio Tsoukalos, David Wilcock, Linda Moulton Howe, Michael Tellinger, Eric von Daniken, Doc Wallach, and many more important researchers and scientists in the field. Contact in the Desert is your place for inside information. Join us at thecontactinthedesert.com to get your tickets today. It's time to make contact. That's contactinthedesert.com. Don't miss it. Contactinthedesert.com.
We are back on Truth Be Told. I'm Captain Ron with Tony Sweet. Today we have Caroline Cory with us. And last year, Caroline, we saw you. Tony and I attended the Alien Con Festival in LA, and we saw you there, and you did a panel, and you were talking about star children. And actually, it really was fascinating to both Tony and I. That's what kind of drew us to you, because we've had a lot of people on recently who had been talking about the afterlife and reincarnation. And we're both very open to this topic, and we kind of want to figure out what the hell's going on. And you have said that a lot of children have these memories, and you're convinced that they're reincarnated. And in fact, they come from other planets oftentimes. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I have a few in my new film, Superhuman. And they talk about, they know exactly which planet they came from. And they know exactly what they're, speaking of lineage, they kind of know the type of being that they are and what they're here to do. Not everybody has that clearly, but they talk about in general terms, like I'm here to help, humans and things like that. So it is fascinating. And I mean, there's a variety of what we call star seeds or star children. So not everybody's exactly the same, but that's a common denominator. Some of them are more aware and conscious than others. But when they talk, I mean, it's amazing. Like you feel that this wisdom, coming out of them. It's like they know. They know for a fact all these things, how the universe works and how we're here. In my new film, this 12-year-old girl and this 7-year-old boy, the 7-year-old boy is telling me that he met Jesus and he started playing with him in an alleyway, and then he can speak to him at any time, and he knows what planet he's from. I mean, it's insane. It's amazing and fascinating.
It is all those things.
No, what's funny, if you think about it, you see a lot of these young kids and children that get cancers, but the way they deal with their illness is they're way beyond their years. The way they look on life and the way, don't worry, mom and dad, I've heard many of these stories, and it's like fascinating to see how it's almost like animals, animals in death. That's just, they're like, it's just part of it. You can tell that, they get their leg cut off and it's like nothing.
Instinctual, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, there's a lot more of these star children, indigos, and coming into this world, because you see these kids that are so more advanced than we ever were. I mean, and what do you think? Do you think this is more to say the planet? Do you say to enhance and maybe a new DNA of more kindness in this world? Why do you think this is really part of our next generation?
Yeah, so different children have different journeys or
Right.
reason for coming trajectories, but in general, it's to uplift the human species in on different levels. So some of them carry a very unique, specific DNA formula or a version of the DNA that transmutes, kind of upgrades the current human DNA. Others are working more energetically. So, for example, they feel inclined to heal other people. I used to just go and put my hand on people, and then they would say, "Oh, I feel so much better," and then whatever illness they had would go away. So some people feel drawn to something like that. Other children are storytellers, like, and I'm not saying storytellers in the sense that making stuff up, but like you were just saying, Tony, it's like they tell you things like the wisdom of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these are destined to be teachers and just and to help enlighten people, raise their mental awareness, their consciousness.
You know, Mary Rodwell was in here telling us the same kind of thing. She talked to a 5-year-old, and he's using words that are just way beyond a 5-year-old's,
Yeah.
normal vocabulary, let alone their perspective on life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's amazing.
Now, do you think these are more reincarnated, or do you feel like it's actually from another dimension?
Some of them are reincarnated. They started their journey sooner, earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and others are coming like a new version of their themselves, but
Mm.
not as a reincarnation. So this, I mean, the conversation of reincarnation is kind of big to, but to kind of without getting into all the details.
Right.
She's talking about
It's
time and space, and
Right.
I mean, everything's big. Everything you talk about is so heady.
yeah, exactly. So that's why I don't want to like go crazy with this topic either, because for me, reincarnation has to do with parallel aspects, because you can come in several bodies at the same time on different planets. So it gets complicated. But just to keep it simple, for for this in this case, some of them, for example, they come in as a human in one time, but then the second time they come in as a different type of entity, not as a human. So they're working on the other side of the veil, helping humans. So these are, for example, the ETs that we sense around us or download information from. And others, for example, have never been a human. They've been a Martian, or they've been
Mm.
some other material form, but they've never been a human. And these are coming in also as the starseed children for the first time in human bodies.
This is the
So
interesting thing that you said when we were sitting there last year at AlienCon that Tony and I talked about. We had talked to Richard Martini and other people about the afterlife and how you're behind the stage and you decide to come down and play a role. But it was always a human role. And we heard you say that sometimes you reincarnate in a different life form.
Mm.
That I had never heard before.
that's what I was saying. It's fascinating. We should do a whole show on just reincarnation.
Totally.
because because that's what I was saying. It depends on the type of consciousness that you have. You certain types of consciousness have the ability to incarnate as parallel, and meaning like at the same time. It's like you split yourself in two. One of you takes on the body of a human, and the other one takes on the body of a Martian, for example. And guess what? Because it's really you, the being that started off before you split off in two, it's still you. So there's a you on Earth and a you on Mars. And that gives you, the person that is on Earth kind of starts to have the feeling of wanting to go to Mars, or communicating with somebody on Mars, or wanting to reconnect with Mars, because there's another aspect of their being that's already there. Does that make sense?
It does. Where are you getting this information from, though? Is this from the beings? The beings tell you?
Yeah. So for me, it's a combination of me. I guess I was kind of like one of those children coming in already knowing some things, remembering and knowing, and then the rest of it was more as I was here reconnecting with that lineage, as I mentioned, and kind of gradually unfolding that information. And so the way I feel the experience, the information, the knowledge, and then I kind of start to see validation, or like have validation of that information that I have when I work with other people. So for example, let's say we do a session, you and I, and all of a sudden I see the reason why you're talking to a Palladian is because another part of you is there. And I'd be like, oh, okay, so that could happen this way as well. You see what I mean? So I come in with, I mean, I receive basic information, and then it gets more and more, it unfolds as I work with so many people, and I see how it kind of happens in so many different ways. And the bottom line is, like, how do I know this is real? Because people say, okay, well, how do you? We know the evidence comes when the problem goes away. So for example, if you came to me and you say, I have this weird phobia of, I don't know, I'm afraid of what?
Foam.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay, so I have this weird phobia. And so I start to work with you, and I look, okay, so what's going on? Why is he developing that particular phobia? It's not a typical phobia, not like spiders or, you know. And so that takes me to a part of you, perhaps on another planet, where you were suffocated with foam or something, you know what I mean? Like whatever. And then when in the session, we change that, we release that, we reprogram that, we let go. I mean, we do a lot of releases and reprogramming. Well, your problem goes away. You've been struggling with it for 10 years, and then we do this one session, and then your problem goes away. We must have done something right. Did you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This is how we get validation that what we just experienced, as crazy and as out there as it may sound, like, what? You're on another planet?
It does sound out there. But it does sound like a past life regression too, right, Tony? That's exactly what they say they do. They go back, the guy got stabbed in the back, he has back pain now.
Yeah.
They talk about it, and then he's fine.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Well, I want to ask you this, since in your lecture or workshop you're going to be talking about planetary portals and grid hotspots. I was wanting to know, with these star children, I mean, they're coming in all over the world, but is there any like portals or grid hotspots around the world that you see more star children that come in, like maybe in Egypt or, you know, Peru, or any places that are ancient sites that they're around that area, that more star children are coming in? Or does it really matter where they come in?
The actual main and the biggest hub is actually near the Arctic Circle. So it's almost like that's the first stop, like that's the first hub. But then from there, different beings can go through the planetary grid and like be born, I don't know, in Egypt or somewhere else, or France or something. And so depending on what their particular agenda is, if they have to be born in a third world country to, you know, to do something, then they're going to make their way there, as opposed to a person that doesn't need that, but is focusing on something else, needs to be in a very advanced civilized country to do something else, you know, then they're going to be, you know, go to, I was going to say the US, but who knows? So, you know, so it depends. That's how it works. But the main hub is in the Arctic Circle, above the Arctic Circle.
You know, I've heard several interviews with you, Caroline, and it's just like that one. That was a good question, although obscure. No matter what is asked of her, she just has an answer.
Click. Yep. Good job.
Oh, I know right where it is. Yep. Not like, oh my God, it could be anywhere. I have no idea. It's always like, yep. That's why I asked you where you got that information. So you've just built this up after years of living in this worldview.
Yeah, and like I said, having the experience, like I never had a guru teacher. Like I didn't follow somebody else's teaching. It's because it came to me as an experience myself. I felt it in my body. I know, like people say, how do you know? You know when you know. So because of that, you can tell, you can feel the truth. And like I said, I do remember certain things, like I said, like those children, I do know my planet of origin, and so it's, I don't talk about it because it's like people are already think it's crazy and weird and out there. So on top of them saying, well, let me tell you about where I'm really from. I mean, it's weird. So but also, working in this field of consciousness and working with so many people and understanding deeper and deeper and acknowledging that this is working and having validation. This person's thing disappeared after 20 years and this person's thing disappeared. I mean, this is the reality and this is the truth. And you get more and more confident, let's say, that what you're doing works.
Oh, you're confident too. Everything you say, you're just like, yep, here's what happened. Yep. I mean, you really have that. Let me ask you one last question here. I know we're running late on time. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on synchronicities?
I mean, it's definitely a thing. To me, it has to do with resonance. So, for example, if I have a thought, it's an energy form that has a certain resonance. So let's say I am writing a book and I want to go out and talk about it. So I'm putting it out there, and I'm an energy form that that is looking for its match in the unified field. And so if I get an email in my inbox from Ron telling me, hey, we're looking for people who have written books on star children, it's going to look like synchronicity, but it's really, it's all about those waves, those spiraling consciousness waves that are finding each other in that unified field. They're a synchronistic, a resonant match. And that's how we end up attracting each other. So that's kind of how I see it. So to me, the reality starts on the other side. We connect energetically first, and then it kind of translates into the 3D material, form. And then when we see each other, we're like, oh my God. But actually, it already happened on the other side.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up, and I know people are finding this very interesting, and they have a lot of questions. But if you're in the area or you haven't got your tickets yet, please purchase your tickets to Contact in the Desert. You can see Caroline Cory in her workshop and lectures, and you can go to carolinecory.com. Find out more information of other areas she's going to be speaking at. But Caroline, thank you so much. You're fascinating, and thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Of course, and you're going to have to come up, and we'll have to find you or come up and say hi to us when we get to Contact.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share this with your friends and family. And please leave great comments. You can leave negative comments about Captain Ron as much as you want, but
why not?
I know, right? And go to our website, truthbetoldworldwide.com, and find out all our upcoming guests. And please sign up for our newsletter. All right. Until then, we'll see you next time. Truth Be Told.